So much has been said of the subversive masterpiece Spec Ops: The Line. Its message continues to haunt players and fuel discussion about video games and violence. Video games are known to evoke feelings of happiness, triumph, accomplishment, fear, and sadness, but Spec Ops: The Line is one of the first games to evoke despair. The game traumatizes its players with its brutal imagery, disturbing story, and vicious deconstruction. It has also become an immensely quotable game, with lines from the game inspiring discussion among players, critics, developers, and academics. So in this video, we count down the top 10 quotes from Spec Ops: The Line. It goes without saying that this video has spoilers for the game. With that, let's begin. Number 10.
Captain Walker, we're all that's left at the damn 33rd.
The nickname for Conrad's unit, the name alone evokes the imagery of biblical bringers of death and destruction. However, as you play through the game, and as you find yourself shooting more Americans than armed locals, the players realize that the nickname takes a different meaning. Walker murders the entire company, often with less than pleasant methods. The game initially portrays them as intimidating, faceless monsters who Walker has to hide from. But towards the end, their masks are removed to reveal people who are trying to survive. There is also the fact that your enemies in this game are American soldiers. Players are often blind to how people and gamers from other countries are uncomfortable with how their people are portrayed as antagonists that are being killed by the dozen by American characters. The game gives the players an idea of what this feels like by making the majority of enemies American soldiers who are trying to protect the local populace. Number 9.
You know, with all the shit going on, I forget it.
A little detail some players may miss when they first play the game is that the guards actually have banter with each other. Until the players start shooting, they can actually eavesdrop on their conversation. And these conversations reveal that the enemies are scared. They are vulnerable, they care for each other. The game continually reinforces that you aren't killing faceless clones, but people. It is an action we are so used to in games that we never stop to think about the massive body count we leave behind and all the lives shattered. This is also done with the radio man who gives you small details into the life of the people you have just killed. These aren't enemies whose whole existence revolve around the destruction of what you hold dear. These are people who are fighting to protect the people they love and for what they believe is right. Number 8.
You better fucking pray he makes it. Let me take him, Walker. Sir, permission to open fire.
This is a line from Adams just after Lugo was lynched by the mob, and it is reflective on how much Adams has changed. Throughout the game, Adams is portrayed as the more altruistic of the trio. He would disobey orders to protect civilians. However, after all that he has been through, this is no longer the case. Enraged over the death of his comrade, Adams is practically begging you for an excuse to commit wholesale slaughter of an unarmed populace. His experiences have heavily scarred him and changed him into a broken, vengeful man. The same could be said of Lugo. Lugo might be more mission-oriented, but he doesn't believe in making people suffer. Despite his protestations, he still follows Walker's command. However, Walker guiding him to commit atrocity after atrocity has left its mark. By the time Walker reaches the radio man, he is insubordinate, volatile, and uncaring. Walker has left a mark on his 2 squad mates, and they are not for the better. Number 7. This line is exclaimed by the damn 33rd seeking retribution for what Walker did at the gate, and they are not wrong. Up until this point, the players have been sure that they were in the right. Not anymore. Walker killed all those people, regardless if he knew they were civilians. This is the start of when the player stops being framed as a hero. People treat you with contempt, sometimes even attacking you. As other reviewers have pointed out, in games where there is a morality choice, the player is usually rewarded regardless of what they choose. but whenever a choice is made in Spec Ops, no one wins, and Walker is further hated for it. It is not a matter of making the hard choice for a greater good. Everything Walker does destroys the chances for survival of the people of Dubai. As the damned 33rd seek to avenge the innocent people you killed, what else can the player do but fight back and reinforce what the enemies believe you are? A murderer. Number 6.
You brought this on yourself.
A line that is repeated throughout the game in various forms. This line is about Walker trying to shift blame and guilt away from him. This becomes evident in the end. In Walker's insanity, he created a villain for him to fight, a way to justify the horrors he has inflicted.
It's Conrad. He did it. All of it.
Conrad is blamed for everything, but to what everything is, Walker declines to clarify. We also see Walker throughout the game continually reinforce that he didn't have a choice in the matter, only to have it torn apart by the people around him. Walker continually reiterates that he had no choice because they are soldiers, in the same way players would divert blame by saying they didn't have a choice because the game didn't give them a choice. This is just one of the many ways the game explores the connection of the characters to the players. Players would defend themselves by saying that if the game gave them an alternative, they would have chosen that instead. However, the game treats the act of playing the game as a choice in itself. Progressing in this game means to continue killing the people of Dubai. However, this is what gamers do. They play, progress, and complete games. The game confronts the players with this uncomfortable reality that things would have been just fine if they just left. The parallels of Walker avoiding blame and the player avoiding accountability is a harsh critique on the modern military shooter genre and opens up interesting discussions on game narrative. Number 5. The game progressively becomes more disturbing, starting out as a cookie-cutter clone of a modern military first-person shooter to a disquieting psychological landscape. The game finds ways to make the players uncomfortable with their situation, the most prominent of which is the violence. Walker and his company starts out as acting like professional soldiers, but slowly degrade into sadistic killers. The execution starts out as quick, but later on become brutal and needlessly cruel. Walker starts out by saying target down, but later on starts saying kill the fucker. Walker himself starts as a handsome if generic video game hero. Further emphasizing this is his voice actor Nolan North, who has voiced many video game characters. He eventually turns into a bloodied and burnt monster. But the most memorable way that the game disturbs its players is through the loading screen. The loading screen starts out as giving hints to the controls, but later on becomes messages that mock the player, reminding them of the countless lives they have taken. What is worse is that the players would often encounter these loading screens if they died, so it is like adding insult to injury. It is like everything in this game turns against the player, even the loading screen. Number 4.
This is all your fault! Yours!
As the game reveals its twist, it forces the players to take a look at everything they had done before. There are some arguments that the game could be considered a horror game. If it is, then it is a game where the player is the monster and everyone else is trying to survive them. The final scene with Conrad is him viciously tearing apart Walker's excuses. Walker tries to remind himself that he is in control. He tries to shift the blame. He tries to go back to his good intentions. Conrad destroys all of this, showing Walker and the player just how pathetic these excuses are. The scene occurs in front of a mirror, where Walker can point the gun at either Conrad or himself. This brilliant scene is actually disguised as a moral choice. It is asking the player if their life is worth saving after everything they have done. The players can answer yes, no, or let the game choose for them, surrendering themselves to the judgment of the game. Number 3.
Gentlemen, welcome to Dubai.
Another line said by multiple people, but with different context in each one. It is first said by Walker and the entrance to Dubai. This is just after a quick funny banter between him and his company. It is just a simple introduction to the setting, but this gives us the impression that the tone of the game would be lighthearted, with funny quips done by a cast with personality. It is setting up players' expectations so that they can feel the full weight when the game blindsides them with what it really is. The second instance is said by Conrad. Before saying it, he is justifying the cruelty of his actions, that what he has done was for the greater good, essentially assuming control over Dubai, treating it as his personal kingdom. In light of the game's twist, this was Walker creating a villain for him to fight so that he could continue being a hero. It was also Walker creating someone he could blame. The last time it is used is in the epilogue. To get this ending, Walker has to shoot Conrad and kill all the soldiers who came to save you and have done nothing to provoke you. In this ending, Walker has given in to his madness. He originally thought that Conrad had become an insane warlord. Now, Walker has taken on that role for himself, as evidenced by him wearing the dead Conrad's jacket. Dubai is his kingdom now, and anyone who enters answers to him. Number 2.
You gave us no choice.
There was always a choice. You just fucked it up.
This reflects Walker's stone-cold determination to move forward regardless of the cost. Lugo points out how dangerous the white phosphorus is, but for the sake of the mission, Walker commands using it. It reflects the player's desire to finish the game, regardless of the consequence. True, the game never really gives you an alternate path to resolve this conflict, but is completing the game really worth the death and suffering of all these people? The commentary has been made how games trivialize and dehumanize human suffering. There is no place where this is more evident than in the drone strike segments in modern war shooters, where the enemy soldiers are reduced to nothing more than a depersonalized blip on a radar that is to be destroyed. The eerie reflection of Walker's face on the computer screen is meant to mirror how the player is emotionlessly looking at a computer screen, seemingly ignorant to the carnage and suffering they are inflicting. Even when he realizes the mistake he has made, Walker replies with simply, "We need to keep moving." Walker's PTSD-induced madness has disconnected him from reality, once again mirroring the player's desire to play a modern military-themed first-person shooter, which are so far removed from the real horrors of war. The game never allows the player to lose themselves in the fantasy, as all of the characters remind Walker and the player that they had a choice and everything is happening is their fault. Number 1.
Well done, Walker. You've done what the storm could not. Destroyed the damn 33rd. Do you feel like a hero yet?
An absolutely brutal criticism of gamers. It forces the players to face the consequences of their actions. Gamers tend to lose themselves in the hero fantasy. In this virtual world, they can feel powerful and acknowledged. The game is pointing out how pathetic the players are for seeking this kind of entertainment in the first place, on how they need to kill dozens of people just to feel excitement, how they have trivialized the horrors of war for their own amusement. It's a cold, hard look in the mirror. In addition, the parts of the game that should have been fun, defeating enemies, conquering incredible odds, landing a perfect shot, it has been turned into ash in the player's mouth. The game never makes this act fun. Sure, whether this message comes across will vary from player to player. Some players will be desensitized to the violence, others won't care about the message. But regardless of this, the actions of the player are never rewarded, applauded, or celebrated. They are just further despised. Gamers subconsciously seek that validation, to be told that they are doing a good job and they should feel proud of what they have accomplished. Whether it is through achievements, progression, or rewards, games find ways to validate its players. True, players may ignore whenever the game praises them, but when it does not, it becomes disturbingly noticeable. Captain Walker continued into Dubai, going against his mission parameters in hopes that the end of his mission will lead to his redemption. In a way, the player also hopes that this is what will happen, that Walker and themselves will be liberated by the emotional shackles of their war crimes. But everything Walker and his company does only proceeds to hasten the demise of everyone in Dubai. The citizens of Dubai are understandably livid at Walker. Consider the scene where Lugo is lynched by the angry mob. The player can fire into the air and the crowd will disperse. This seems like the morally right thing to do, not that the citizens will ever acknowledge what you did. What is sparing their lives now when all of your actions have ensured their death within days? Or you could give in to your anger and murder the unarmed civilians, proving that they were right about you all along. No one wins when Walker makes a choice. That includes the player. This is not a fun game. Finishing the game leaves the players angry, confused, exhausted, physically sick, or resort to coping mechanisms like stoicism or laughter. But in a way, this shows what the medium of video games are really capable of. The players feel responsible for their actions. The players never had a choice, but they were the ones who pulled the trigger. This leaves players with a metaphorical blood on their hands. When the other characters berate Walker for his actions, the players can't help but feel that they are being attacked as well. While not a perfect game, Spec Ops The Line has contributed much to the discourse of video games. It has brought to light questions that gamers may have never thought about before. How PTSD can influence someone's reality, the ethics of using white phosphorus, how the support of a genre of video games can be considered a political statement, whether games can be hypocritical, how mechanics can reinforce a narrative or theme. These are just a few of the points of discussion that gamers have recently found themselves participating in. There are many others who have done analysis on this incredible game, and I encourage others to join the discourse and make their own interpretations and conclusions about it. Until our paths cross again, see you, Delta Squad.